Hello, everyone. Yes, tonight we're talking about the Netflix documentary, 2025 Chaos Netflix documentary, obviously by, the book was by Tom O'Neill. But yes, as I was putting this together, before I've even had a chance to add it to the slides, I found out Tom O'Neill distanced himself from this documentary before it was made as well. So yeah, don't blame Tom O'Neill for this documentary. But yeah, I'm going to give you my review tonight, obviously, of the Cats documentary. Welcome to the stream, everyone. How are you all? And on the cats on the left. So you'll probably see the cats tonight as well. Excellent. Welcome to the stream, everyone. Mark's here as always. That is Jim Watson. Well, yes. And so I've got a slideshow, obviously. And like I say, I didn't have a chance to fit it into the slideshow, but there is a video on YouTube where Tom O'Neill talks about this documentary and renounces it. And the Rotten Tomatoes interviews for it weren't great either. Not to be a spoiler, but yeah. But it is an interesting documentary anyway. Well, hello. Oh, Michelle Phillips. Phillips. I keep calling you Michelle Phillips, don't I? But you're Michelle Phillips. Yeah, that's it. Michelle said. Excellent. Right. So we'll get on with it. I didn't change the title. It's 2025. What the 2025 Gals documentary still won't say. Start with looking at the 2025 Gals documentary and what it still refuses to say. This should have been the visual companion to Tom O'Neill's book, but changed from a series to a 2-hour show. So instead it repeats the safer parts, cuts the explosive bits, and keeps steering you gently back towards the official line. So I'm going to go through what they show and what they leave out and the contradictions they don't touch. Yeah, and Stephen Kay, you see him in it. He was at the original trial, Beausoleil's assistant, and then Leslie Van Houten's subsequent trials was the prosecution. And so Stephen Kay comes on. In this documentary, he's pure Beausoleil, helter-skelter race war prophecy, all of it, which is strange because in the Peacock documentary, he was more open-minded, and in Chaos, he's actually horrified by Beausoleil's hidden notes. So he's turned shifts depending on the project. Here he falls straight back into the official script. And obviously, when you see Stephen Kay in this, there's another way I can do this as well, don't you? When you see Stephen Kay in the documentary here, he's obviously been hired to be like the counter to the conspiracy theory. Because to be responsible, if you're making a documentary, you have someone arguing both sides of the matter. So they've obviously hired Stephen Kay in this documentary to be the helter-skelter guy. And that was all he was paid to say. But when you watch the Peacock documentary, he's a bit more cynical and he gives a bit more of his real opinion of Beausoleil. But in this documentary, he just is there to talk about the narrative, basically. That's what he does. And Tom O'Neill, pretty soon into it, says around 7-8 minutes in, Tom O'Neill makes his central point. I still don't know what happened. I just know what they tell us isn't what happened. And that's the entire reason this case pulls people in. You can't reach a clear conclusion because too much evidence is missing or contradictory. But you can absolutely see the lies. And they also flash a rare photo of the sofa with the American flag at 4:40, worth freezing. And I can't watch it on a computer, so I can screenshot that for you. But yeah, it's actually quite hard to find crime scene photos with the flag on the sofa, but there is one you see in this documentary. So yeah, worth watching it, even just for that. And he talks about Manson refused to sign his parole release forms in 1967 when he was released. At around 9 minutes, they show a document where Charles Manson refuses to sign his release papers in 1967. He didn't want to be freed. It fits with institutionalization, but it does make you wonder whether he sensed he was walking into trouble. And this part is speculative, but the document itself is real, because it does show you that at one point they actually flash it up on the screen. When Manson was released from prison, he refused to sign the document. And so, yeah, it just makes you wonder. Was it a premonition? Did he know? what was going to happen. But obviously, typically men who've been in prison as long as he had all say that anyway. But he refused to sign the document. And there's increasing stuff I'm seeing behind the scenes building up evidence that Manson was messed with while he was in these McNeil Island and Terminal Island, and things went on with him. So who knows? But yeah, he refused to sign his release document. He didn't want to go from prison. And by 11 minutes into the documentary, it's gone straight to MK Ultra and Jolly West and CIA mind control. And they play a clip of Manson describing how he got the girls at Haight-Ashbury. And it's basically the lover boy grooming method. It's classic pimping, it's coercive control. But the documentary refuses to acknowledge that and instead frames it as the mysterious mind control, and they avoid the trafficking angle entirely. And this picture here is the Manson puppet that they show in the Chaos documentary. You see the picture in the background there. And it appears to be when they were interviewing Tom O'Neill at his house. This is something Tom O'Neill's actually got at his house, that Manson puppet, and the puppets of the girls. They show it sat down and that. But yeah, though everything that they talk about, the way Manson could make the girls talk to him and follow him around and not speak before being spoken to and all that. They make that sound like, he had them under some kind of mind control. Actually, that's classic coercive control anyway. And they don't ever mention that in this documentary. Oh, and the Haight-Ashbury interviews and the crash padness thing here. We get rare interviews with the Haight-Ashbury Clinic staff and some footage of Jolly West I haven't seen before. This part is valuable, but the crash pad story is exaggerated. Although Jolly West later spoke about the Haight-Ashbury crash pad as if it were a productive research site, none of the evidence supports that. Stephen Kinzer's Poisoner-in-Chief is clear. West San Francisco sealed experiments produced no usable scientific data, largely because the researchers were given no clear instructions and the environment was completely uncontrolled. This matches the findings of the Senate's Church Committee, which reported that MK Ultra field teams were not informed of the precise nature of the tests or what results were expected. Chaos also notes that no structured data set or published research ever came from the Haight-Ashbury site in the book. The most likely explanation is that West talked it up later to justify his funding, when in reality the project achieved nothing. The documentary tries to imply there was some secret brainwashing hub, but it simply wasn't. Since there was a cut-down version of the 5-part series, I was frustrated they dedicated so much time to talking about West, when they could have been talking about more of the directly related Manson case stuff he uncovered in Chaos. And yeah, like I say, the comment that Tom O'Neill made was that it did a disservice to the book, the documentary. And I think they actually used too much time to cover all this bit in the documentary when they could have covered more of the directly Manson related stuff, yeah. And Jolly West is the convenient ghost. The documentary flirts with the idea that Jolly West was influencing Manson. Then O'Neill drops the key fact he could never place Jolly West and Manson together, not once. And that's interesting because West turns up in every other case linked to mind control. Jack Ruby, Patty Hearst, etc. But there's nothing public at all in this case before his death in 1999. He was involved in anti-cult activities, commented publicly about the rise of extremist groups and militias, consulted on general psychological profiles of extremists, taught courses at UCLA related to coercion, indoctrination, and terrorism, published academic work on how extremist organizations recruit and control members. But yeah, there's not much publicly to prove he was ever involved with this case. I did find a documentary that ran one of Texas parole hearings. If you watch the stream I did about Texas psychiatric reports through the years, I found one show where Jolly West is talking about the Manson case, and he talks as if he has spoken to them. But I've not seen any information that he ever spoke to any of these people. It is really weird when you consider, he was involved in every other case where there's any kind of mind control implication. He was obviously some kind of expert for them, but you don't hear of him being involved in the case. Like I say, I've seen one documentary from the 80s where you see him talking about the Manson case as if he's spoken to them, but I've never seen any evidence that he ever spoke to any of the people, the murderers from the Manson case. Yeah, short for Jolyon, yeah. Louis was his real first name. Roger Smith and the parole violations. Then we get to Roger Smith, Manson's parole officer, constantly letting him break parole. The documentary leans into this was suspicious angle, but the more realistic explanation is that Roger Smith was studying gangs and Manson became a field subject. Sloppy, unethical research, but not necessarily a covert program. And look at my Substack article for more evidence about all this, but I'll tell you now. Roger Smith was a psychologist, obviously, and he was studying gangs and drugs and all this sort of thing. And so it looks like the more realistic explanation is he was actually studying the Manson family rather than trying to program or manipulate them. He was just studying gangs at the time, and Manson was a test subject for him, basically. And around 20 minutes in, Bobby Beausoleil appears, talking about Dennis Wilson and Gregg Jakobson. He was way more connected than Manson musically, and Jakobson comes in. The documentary never questions him about the gold penetrators. Instead, he tells the usual girls throwing themselves at us stories, including the naked woman on the diving board yelling, "Fuck me, feed me, and keep me high," and jumping into the pool. He also admits he was the one who introduced Melcher to the family and got him to come out to the ranch and film Manson and the girls. The documentary plays recordings of Melcher saying he only went to the ranch twice and thought about making a film on the family, but it avoids the biggest reveals from chaos. Melcher going to the ranch after the murders, Melcher lying about how well he knew Tex Watson, Melcher's link to Ruth Ann Morehouse, Altobelli claiming Melcher was obsessed with Manson and followed him around trying to turn him into a star. None of this is mentioned. They tiptoe around him completely. And just before the 30-minute mark, Jakobson openly says drugs were big business and the family were involved. Bobby then recounts the Crowe shooting. And around 31:54, he mentions the mescaline was in capsules, the first time I've ever heard that confirmed. This is the drug trade context Beausoleil tried to erase. And this is when they start talking about the Hinman murder. Bobby says the mescaline was encapsulated, meaning he put it into capsules. Because I'd always wondered, was it just like raw mescaline they handed over? But no, it was apparently mescaline capsules. So it would have been little capsules with mescaline. And yeah, it's the first time I'd heard that confirmed at this time. And like I say, they talk about the drug trade, but only in relation to the Hinman murder. Yeah, and wait to hear what Bobby says next. At around 39 minutes, Bobby denies that the murders had anything to do with his arrest. Instead, he pushes the idea that Manson just wanted everyone to commit violent crimes so everyone would have blood on their hands, so no one would snitch about the Bernard Crowe shooting. Then he repeats the nonsense that Tex was sent to kill Terry Melcher at Cielo Drive, even though they all knew Melcher didn't live there. They knew exactly where he was living. And this is a quote from The Family by Ed Sanders. The person named Bryn Lukashevsky, who witnessed the shooting of Bernard Crowe, called Dennis Wilson several days later and told him about it. Gregg Jakobson heard the conversation and evidently told Melcher. Melcher was very upset about it, and that may have been the cause of the final rupture in any and all plans to record or film Manson. One day, Manson asked Jakobson if Terry had a green spyglass set up outside of his beach house in Malibu. Yes, Jakobson replied. Well, he doesn't now, chortled Charlie. So it was Doris Day's telescope that they finally used when scanning for Black Panther raids from the Santana Susana hilltop. That's from the Family by Ed Sanders. And if they wanted to kill Terry Melcher, they would have gone to Malibu, not Cielo Drive. And we always quote that when saying, they knew Charlie didn't live there. But also Altobelli in court, Rudy Altobelli, testified under oath that Charles Manson came to the guest house shortly before he left for Rome with Sharon Tate. Altobelli made it clear in court that he told Manson directly that Terry Melcher no longer lived at Cielo Drive. Rudy Altobelli's testimony. I asked him if he was alone, and he said yes. I asked, did you go to the front house? And he said yes. And I said, why? And what did he want? And he said he was looking for Terry Melcher. I said, Terry Melcher did not live there anymore. And he said, yes, I knew that, but where did he live? And I said he lived in Malibu. I did not know the exact address. This testimony destroys Bobby's story completely. If Manson knew Melcher had moved to Malibu, and he absolutely did, then there is no way Tex was sent to Cielo to kill Melcher. They knew exactly where Melcher was living, and Cielo wasn't it. So yeah, there's like a couple of sources that say that the Manson family definitely knew Melcher was not living at Cielo Drive when they went to Cielo Drive to kill people. And if Bobby said even it was to put fear into Terry Melcher or whatever, that would be more accurate. But yeah. And I don't want to spoil it when it comes to the review of the final word, but he says that in the final word as well, that he believes he sent Tex to kill Melcher at Cielo Drive. But yeah, there are several different versions, accounts that say the Manson family definitely knew Terry Melcher was not at Cielo Drive, including Rudy Altobelli in court. So Bobby's talking out of his arse, basically, when he says these things in documentaries. And it's sad because he's actually right when he talks about how after the Bennett Crowe shooting, Charles Manson would have become paranoid. And in these criminal gangs sort of thing, they make everyone commit a violent crime so no one can snitch on each other. So yeah, he's on the money when he talks about that. And that's probably why he was intimidated into, doing whatever he did. And Tex got bullied into doing whatever he did. But obviously Tex way overreacted to it all, didn't he? And way overkilled everyone. But that's the cool reason behind these things, the same thing. But then he goes and messes it up by saying bullshit like that. Terry said that he went to kill Terry Melcher when Bobby must have known himself. Even Terry Melcher didn't live there. On around 53 minutes in, O'Neill argues police likely knew who did it far earlier than October. And honestly, given they already had Bobby and Susan in custody, that's believable. During the Spahn Ranch raid section, they briefly show Ruth Ann Morehouse while mentioning underage girls, but don't name her, even though she's heavily covered in chaos. And around 1:01, they discuss the immunity deal Susan Atkins nearly got before she recanted. So when she did her grand jury testimony. She would have only got partial immunity, so just no death penalty. Unlike Mary Bruner and Linda Kasabian, who got full immunity. Which shocks a lot of people because people say, why did Linda Kasabian get full immunity? She should have just got no death penalty and had to do like life in prison or whatever, shouldn't she? And Mary Brunner as well. It's quite shocking. People don't talk so much about the murder of Gary Hinman because it's kept separate. But all these crimes should be tried together. They were a sequel to the event, And Mary Brunner's another one who walked. And she was the original Manson girl. She was the first girl with Charles Manson initially. And she's the one who walked, and she was there at the first murder. And Susan Atkins was as well. And she died in prison after this whole chain of events went off. And Mary Brunner was in jail for credit card fraud because they'd used stolen credit cards that day. That they went to Cielo Drive and did what they did. So if Mary Brunner hadn't been in jail that day, would she have gone to Cielo Drive as well? And Susan, like I say, wouldn't have got full immunity. So why did Linda Kasabian get full immunity? The whole thing just stinks, doesn't it? And obviously in the Spahn Ranch raid, the whole thing is just very, very strange. But they talk about that in this documentary. Around 1:03, O'Neill says something very accurate. This case was used to turn parents against the counterculture and scare them off communes and undermine the anti-war movement. And that fits perfectly with COINTELPRO operations. At 1:04, they show Black Panther footage with pigs placards, and it's obvious why the family later wrote pig. It was meant to frame the Panthers. And just the COINTELPRO aspect of this, rather than the CIA. It's the FBI you should be looking at, the COINTELPRO thing. And also, Tom O'Neill does get into it. Did Manson get groomed to feed the race war narrative, to his followers? Did something go wrong, basically? And yeah, but obviously you see the footage of the Black Panthers, and it's quite hard to find it and show it generally. But yeah, the Black Panthers used the word pig a lot and wave placards around saying the word pig, so you can see why they use the word pig. And that's it. The documentary ends with Stephen Kay repeating the helter-skelter again, but it raises a bigger question. Was Manson really obsessed with race war, or was he repeating rhetoric that COINTELPRO wanted circulating? O'Neill speculates that might be what was going on. Manson was being pushed into starting something with the Black Panthers. If COINTELPRO wanted racial conflict and Manson was given leeway, the whole story looks different. If you watched my While the World Burned series, you'll know the Manson trial was used as a media circus to bury far bigger stories happening at the same time. And this documentary still avoids connecting those dots. And the final verdict is it's worth watching for the rare footage, interviews, and certain admissions from Jakobson and Bobby, but it avoids the biggest revelations in chaos. Melcher after the murders, the Morehouses, drug motives, and the trafficking grooming dynamic. So ultimately, it's a sanitized, TV-safe version of chaos, missing the hardest truths, basically. And yeah, like the Rotten Tomatoes reviews of it are all pretty similar. And even Tom O'Neill himself said it did the book a disservice. But it's worth watching for the footage and the pictures of some of the documents and all that sort of thing. But yeah, it's sad what it misses, basically. And they dedicated too much time to Johnny West. That was my main point of contention. Why did they talk about Jack Ruby so much? Because everyone knows all that anyway. They didn't need to dedicate all that time. They could have spent more time talking about the chaos, things and all that sort of thing. Yeah. But like I say, there'll be more detail when I do the Substack article. But that's all the slides I have for the thing. That was my verdict on it. I don't know. Have any of you seen the Netflix documentary? Have any of you even watched it in the chat there? None of you are talking like you've watched it. And yeah, I've heard it was supposed to be a 5-part series, but it got shortened into a 2-hour documentary. And there is a other YouTube podcast that Tom O'Neill's done where he sort of distances himself from it. And they appear to film him in his house. And like I say, that puppet looks like Tom O'Neill's own puppet, the Manson puppet, and that. It's interesting. No one's watched it, have you? Yeah, Bill Murphy's not seen it. Has no one watched it? It's worth it. Three guys, one hammer just says, smoke meth. There you go. It's great. See, one guy's watched it and pretty much agrees. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? It's pretty much. And even Tom O'Neill himself said, and he's interviewed in it, so he was obviously at one point agreeing to it, but he's distanced himself from it and hasn't made a big fuss or made a public statement or anything, but he feels that it did the book a disservice. Yeah. You're not a fan of Tom O'Neill at all? Yeah, that's it. Yeah. But yeah, as a documentary, it's not that great. But there is a lot of good footage, so it's worth watching just for that. If you have Netflix, I wouldn't buy Netflix just to watch it, but if you have Netflix, it's worth watching to see the footage. But they could have covered the more, other aspects of the Manson case rather than going on about the Jack Ruby thing. But there's interesting footage. There is some footage of the people from the Haight-Ashbury Clinic that were working there when the Manson family came in, who remember the Manson family. And so you see some of that. That's good. And there's footage of Johnny West talking. But yeah, Tom O'Neill even admits in it that he didn't ever manage to prove Manson and Johnny West ever met each other or anything, And I don't know why they bothered. Yeah. Smoked brisket, not meth. Yeah. You think it's not worth watching? I thought it was for some of the footage and some of the things they showed, and there are interviews with Tom O'Neill. But even he distanced himself from it, so and felt it did a disservice to the book, and I thought it did as well. I thought they could have gone into other angles. And Stephen Kay was just there to be the alternative argument, trying to make it look balanced. So someone who was there to defend the initial argument, and that was all he'd been paid to say, so that was what he did. But if you watch him in other documentaries, he gives you his real opinion about Beausoleil. And in the book Chaos, it says he was shocked when Beausoleil showed him. No, when Tom O'Neill, showed him Beausoleil's notes, he was shocked by what he saw in that, and so he questioned Beausoleil as well. But in this documentary, he's obviously just been paid to spout the helter-skelter thing again, so he does. Which just shows you how bent this all is, you know what I mean? They'll say whatever the person behind the camera is paying them to say, All of them. And he was the prosecution's assistant for the main trial, and then the person prosecuting Leslie at her subsequent 2 trials. Yeah, he hasn't finished making it yet, apparently. He's meant to interview me for it at some point. He hasn't yet, but yeah. Whether he would or not. Yeah. It'll be interesting. I think Chaos isn't held in as high esteem as it was, so Netflix just dashed up a quick documentary instead of giving it the full treatment. Yeah, well, this was meant to be, originally intended to be the visual accompaniment to the book. And it was meant to be a 5-part series. And then they've just, thrown it to a 2-part thing. And, Tom O'Neill ended up distancing himself from it. Though he is interviewed in it, and he says he's still friends with the director. So who knows what went wrong with it, really. And I want to see what he's going to write in Chaos 2 when Chaos 2 finally comes out. So that'll be interesting. Yeah. Yeah, you saw it and thought it was okay-ish. Yeah, the Rotten Tomatoes interviews for it aren't great either. Like I say, it's worth watching just for the footage. But yeah, it's a shame they didn't talk about other aspects as well. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's basically what it is, isn't it? Yeah. Stephen Kay will jump in front of any microphone to spit out the Hellscatter bullshit for some cash, yeah. But in the Peacock documentary, he was actually a bit more cynical, wasn't he? And actually, Tom O'Neill says in Chaos that when he got him and showed him Beausoleil's notes, he was shocked as well. And he admitted that he thought things were dodgy. And the whole thing in Chaos is he found that Beausoleil was covering something up for Terry Melcher, basically, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we go for 32 minutes. That was it. And like I said, the Substack article for this is going to have loads more detail about Roger Smith, his parole officer, and how he was studying gangs in Mexico. And the evidence, that Roger Smith's involvement wasn't about programming him, it was because he was watching him, basically, yeah. And the Mexico stuff all adds up to them being studied rather than programmed. And COINTELPRO, people have blamed the CIA when they should have been looking at the FBI and what the FBI were doing. The planned race war was coming from the FBI at the time, you know what I mean? They were just trying to frame the Black Panthers. Yeah, well, I've said this loads on other streams, haven't I? Yeah, but he crossed out stuff about Terry Melcher visiting the ranch after the murders and stuff like that. That was what was in Billy Ace's notes. It was in Chaos, yeah. Mm. Yeah, well, that's it. He's not always credible. He seesaw many times back and forth, which is not flattering to his statements. But like I say, I'm about to review a load of Manson documentaries in a row. And yeah, you see him, I think in The Final Word is the one where they actually hardball question him and make him sit there and look and look like he's questioning himself and like, yeah. But you see him in all the documentaries, he's usually there and no one's questioning him. He's just there and reciting it. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah. Mm. Yeah, this is supposed to be while he's in McNeil Island or Terminal Island. Yeah, before he's released, he was in a cell with a Scientologist, basically. He's supposed to have had loads of Scientology training. This is another thing. Yeah, that's it. In the Rob Zombie Ghost. That was what I was talking about. And yeah, he starts to look like he's questioning it there. And in the Peacock documentary, he gives like quite a candid assessment. But then in this, it depends what they're paying him to do. You know what the people paying him are saying, basically. That's it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think Mary's. Yeah, well, Sandra. Look at Sandra. Yeah, I reckon Sandra definitely would have. And Mary had already gone to do Bobby Beausoleil, to do Gary Hinman with Bobby for Bobby, hadn't she? You know. So I think she would go. She would have gone again. Yeah. And so then would Kremwinkle have even gone? Would Mary Brenner have been the one leading it? Or would Linda have had to go? Or whatever, yeah. If Sandy had been there, would Sandy and Mary have gone? And so who else wouldn't have? Because Mary was the ground zero Manson girl, the very first Manson girl, weren't she? And Lynette didn't go. Lynette was one of the first as well. But Kremwinkle went. And Mary and Sandy were two of the other really early Manson girls, so I think they would have gone had they not been in jail that day. That's the disturbing thing. Yeah, Charlie claimed to have attained the clear, which is like, yeah, very high. But nowadays they have to have paid thousands of dollars and bought ridiculous books and all this sort of stuff to have claimed that, to have gained that amount of clearance. But what was it like in the early 60s? Maybe it was possible to do it just that, through that in windows. Yeah, well, if that was the Manson family, but yeah, did Mary go on Thursday night to Sebring's house as well? Because yeah, something happened at Sebring's house the night before, as Tom O'Neill brings up in Chaos. But was that the Manson family, or could that have been the Canadians? That's the other thing, isn't it? That's what I always thought about that. And Vern also volunteered, and Cappy as well. I think it's in the final word. You hear Cappy talking about how gutted she is that she didn't get to go along to the Lobby Anchors the second night. And that's like now, currently, as an adult, years later, she's still saying she's devastated that they didn't take her along to the lobby anchors. That's how messed up these girls are, you know what I mean? Even knowing that all the girls that went that night, rotting in prison or whatever. Leslie got out when she was 70. What Cranwinkle will probably get out. Susan died in prison, and Cappy still is devastated they didn't take her along to the lobby anchors night. Oh, is it enough to do enough about a whole video about that? Yeah, it's only one night, wasn't it? Yeah, before. But his TV went out and the lighting went out, didn't it, or something at his house? So that's why they were staying at Cielo the night before. But then I hear other stories saying they had been on a massive mescaline bender for days as well. So who knows what was really going on? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, Kathy Hoffman actress was stuck in Scientology. She didn't program anyone, but went through a lot of crap. But yeah, she was probably the one who was being like, well, I can't even remember what they bloody call it. Yeah, but processed or whatever, isn't it? Yeah, whatever they do to you. But yeah, they just basically gather your deepest, darkest secrets and then blackmail you about them, don't they? That's the whole crux of Scientology. It turns out now it's all been leaked. It's awful. Basically, yeah, that's all they do. Get you to confess the most horrible things you've ever done, and then they bully you about it and threaten to expose it. Yeah. And it turns out that a lot of the people in Hollywood have done really awful things, and they helped cover them up, haven't they? That's why they're in trouble now, because people are finally getting sent down for it, aren't they? Yeah. Gosh, well, I might end this now and go to another show because yeah, we've got to the end of the discussion for the thing. So yeah, I'll see you in 5 minutes if you want an aftershave. If not, I'll see you next week when we're going to be talking about Garrettson finally. Yeah, Garrettson's really popular at the moment, obviously, because of the new footage that's been released. I can see from my stats, for some reason, the Garrettson stuff's doing really well. So we'll talk about the Garrettson thing next week. I'll do a whole summary of it. Yeah. Everything I've done about Garrettson. So we've got all that in mind before we watch the press conference he gave just after he'd been released from the police station. Because remember, I've covered what he said in court and the lie detector test they gave him within like 24 hours of the murders happening. And so I'll give you a summary of everything he said there, and then we'll watch the press conference that's just come out that he gave like literally after being released, and he's still got like foam in the corners of his mouth and everything. Also, so yeah, that'll be interesting. Excuse me. But yeah, anyway. Yeah, like I say, I'll finish the spell, and if you want to do an after show, come back in about 5 minutes. Thank you for coming, everyone. And like I say, check out the Substack article for more detail if you want my thoughts on the documentary. But yeah, pretty much the same as what everyone else has said. And look at Rotten Tomatoes, the Rotten Tomatoes reviews for it. They say it didn't do the book justice, basically. Even Tom O'Neill himself, though he's interviewed for it, has distanced himself from it since. Yeah. Yeah. See you in 5 minutes if you want an after show. If not, I'll see you next week when we'll talk about Garrettson's press conference. See you in a minute, guys.